Quite welcome.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, hello, Leeds. Good morning. Welcome to this very special edition of Two Parkies in a Pod, live from Parkon here in Leeds. I'm Dave Clark, he's Kuhan. Together we've had Parkinson's for nearly a quarter of a century. The dreaded Lurgy.
Dreaded Lurgy, yeah. He's quite happy because this is his hometown, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, massively so. I used to come into Leeds to watch concerts back in the day. I remember seeing Wham at Leeds University.
Wow.
I saw Duran Duran at Leeds Queens. I remember going to see Duran Duran play, and I was in my winkle pickers.
Winkle pickers?
Pantaloon trousers, frilly shirt. And I had a pink headband on. This girl said to me, "Who do you think you are, Sam Le Bon's ass?"
Well, I've called you similar in the past, haven't I, Dave? But it's great to be here after 35 episodes. This is episode 36 and our first ever live episode. So we're not sure how this is going to go, but fingers crossed you guys will have a good time and we'll have a good chat. And we've got a guest coming on shortly, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. We'll chat about that. Nice to know Parkinson's UK have been to DFS sale as well.
Yes, they're all in the brand colours, which is wonderful. Yeah.
I think it's in Oak Furniture Land, this one.
Yes, yeah. You'll have to excuse me because I'm a bit tremory this morning, and I think this morning you're going to see the full transition from me going from off to on to dyskinetic. But I used to be quite embarrassed about my symptoms, but Dave keeps telling me I shouldn't be embarrassed, right?
No, you've got to be parking proud. I think you've got to develop rhino hide to live a happy life with Parkinson's.
I figure we're in good company, right? So, yes. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Our guest is a bit of a star. He's a rock star in the field of neurology. He'll light up the room. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Bas Bloem.
Hey! After you, Bas.
I like the music.
Yeah, it's good. You approve, right?
Yeah.
We did notice that you went to a Sting concert recently.
Yeah, in Philadelphia.
Pick out
Amazing guy, 73.
Wow.
He looks as fit as the two of you do.
Wow. And, he pointed to me first.
You're a lot taller than you look on Instagram.
Yes. We were going to do this standing up, but then I looked at these two and I thought, no, I better not. How tall is it for you?
It's 6'7".
What are you, Dave?
2 meters and a little bit.
6'4".
Right, I'm just going to go now, I think. Yeah. No, but we're sitting down. We're going to have a comfy chat, and this is the second time you've been on the podcast, isn't it, Bas?
Yeah. We did one on the elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room, which is
mortality.
Mortality.
Parkinson's, a difficult topic, and I think we addressed it well. I think it was well received.
Did, yes. If you haven't heard that episode, it really is fantastic. And in that episode, you talked about the two truths in Parkinson's, right? Impact on mortality is what on one side, and the other side is?
Well, the point is, if I see a person with Parkinson's in my clinic, I will tell them, you'll grow old, and that's true. If I speak to policymakers, to funding bodies, I tell them Parkinson's is a deadly disease, which is also true. And the two truths can be reconciled because you do lose numbers of years lived because of Parkinson's. And the younger you get the disease, the more years you lose. Luckily, it's not many years, as many as, for example, in ALS or other deadly diseases. But it's time that we call this disease by its name, which is not only horrible during life, but it's a deadly disease. And I'm saying this because I think we deserve more attention and we deserve more funding to eventually get rid of this disease.
Well, it's incredible that Parkinson's charities get 10 times the funding. Neurological charities get a tenth of the funding that cancer charities get. I'll say it again. Cancer charities get 10 times the funding that neurological charities do. And survival rates have doubled in the last 5 years in cancer. Yeah, Parkinson's, all these horrible MLS, we don't get any.
Well, we need to collaborate. I did a live interview on Dutch National Radio, and somebody said to me, well, you're saying Parkinson's is the world's fastest growing condition, neurological, which it is. Somebody else says kidney disease is the worst thing that can happen to a human being. And it seems like all these medical conditions are in competition. But we shouldn't compete. And I think the interviewer was dead right. We need to collaborate. And for example, environmental toxins, which I think contribute to the rise of Parkinson's, also cause cancer. So why don't we fortify each other and instead of competing with each other?
I think in that, I think in that episode we also touched on the fact that it's very difficult to convey the enormity of Parkinson's. It's got a lot of the symptoms, a lot of the impact is hidden, not just the people that are living with this condition, but their loved ones as well. And you call the Parkinson's community somewhat too nice in a respect, right? We have to kind of maybe shout a bit louder.
Absolutely.
Right? The pain this is absolutely causing us.
I met a lovely gentleman at breakfast. Where are you, sir? you were sitting right next to me. And I said, well, what brings you? He says, I've got Parkinson's. I said, well, you look well. The man, there you are.
Yay.
And you do look well. And he said, yeah, but you don't know what's happening inside. And I said, yes. I happen to know what disease is like. Yeah. But it's true. He does look very well. But what is happening inside, the invisible part of Parkinson's, is what is really causing so much trouble to all of you, and it deserves more attention.
I hate it when people say you look well. It just really annoys me.
No, you look like shit.
That's better. Thank you very much.
There you go. There you go.
But I do feel like shit sometimes. And it's not always apparent, to be honest with you. And it's a frustration for many people with Parkinson's, because just to convey the sheer enormity of the condition, the 40+ symptoms, most of them are invisible. It's a real challenge, and that's why a lot of us tend to hide away and become very isolated, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, anxiety is a big thing. You know, I was never an anxious person. I worry about the slightest thing. Now, if I'm driving the car, my wife's driving the car, I'm putting the brakes on next to her, you know, really worried. It seems stupid, but it's a big thing in my life, you know, anxiety.
No, absolutely. So we're going to talk about living well with Parkinson's, which seems like a paradox, but it isn't. And you're mentioning anxiety. So one of the major breakthroughs, I think, in the last 10 years is the enormous attention that we're now seeing for stress and the impact on Parkinson's. And it's doing two things. So stress and anxiety are a core feature of the disease. People who have always been rigorous and robust may become more uncertain and anxious. For example, crossing a street when you have freezing of gait. But even anticipation of an event like this could cause anxiety. And we know that anxiety and stress worsen symptoms. For example, the tremor. Yeah. I always say the tremor is a thermometer for stress.
It is.
But freezing of gait gets worse, dyskinesias get worse. So it worsens symptoms, and there are concerns that chronic stress might hasten progression of the disease. Now, there's no evidence to suggest, but the immediate effects of stress should be suppressed. And doctors may tell you, do stress management, and they send you out. And they say, well, but how? It's good to know that there is now good scientific evidence to support the merits of mindfulness and yoga. And of course, you need a mindfulness teacher or a yoga teacher or a group that appeals to you. But fighting stress and suppressing stress using, for example, mindfulness is a really good evidence-based treatment.
It is, and Dave and I do a weekly yoga class, and some of the fellow classmates here in the audience, and we really get the benefit from it, don't we?
We go on 15 minutes before, so we chat. You know, we put the week to rest. You know, just chat 15 minutes before. Then do the yoga from 10 o'clock in the morning. 15 minutes is brilliant, though. It's like sitting around a campfire. You know, chatting about life, and everyone should have a Parky friend.
Absolutely, and this is mine. I would say, I mean, like you said, stress is a barometer for my overall condition. My physical symptoms are a barometer for my state of mind. And you learn very quickly with this condition, the state of mind is very much reflecting the state of body and vice versa. And I think once you acknowledge that and you work on the mind, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's Pilates, whatever it is, your physical symptoms are that much better. So, why wouldn't you do these activities? And I think it's very important.
Can I share a recent finding from my group with you and the audience? So I'll take you as an example. Yes. So we have shown in a recent study that will soon appear in Annals of Neurology, which is one of our elite journals, that propranolol, which is a so-called beta blocker that suppresses the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and that's the part of the nervous system that's beyond the will. If you see a lion, your heart starts to beat faster, not because you want it to beat faster, it happens automatically. Now that system can be suppressed using a simple drug called propranolol. At a dose of just 10 or maybe 20 milligrams, depending on your body posture, if you take it ad hoc, for example, you could have taken that 10 minutes prior to coming to the stage, and we've shown that it suppresses tremor, it suppresses dyskinesias, and it may suppress the anxiety that worsens freezing of gait. Don't use it chronically, because you cannot exercise well when you're on maintenance therapy, but just ad hoc use. You know, you've got friends over on Sunday for supper, you're anxious, you take the propranolol in a low dose, and it will help you. And it's sort of off-label, but it's now evidence-based, and we have a paper coming out soon. So that's a useful trick for all of you.
I would say, though, my tremor doesn't stop me coming on stage and doing this podcast, but my anxiety, my my low moods and my fatigue and my apathy, those sorts of symptoms, the hidden symptoms of Parkinson's, really are the ones that impact my life on a day-to-day basis. And it's refreshing that we're spending the first 10 minutes actually talking about these invisible hidden symptoms. And you're a movement disorder specialist, right?
Yeah, but I always that's what they say.
That's what they say, but I always think it's a contradiction that we talk about this being a movement disorder, where most of the symptoms aren't really anything to do with movement, right?
Right. It's because James Parkinson spotted people walking on the street in London. That's how he described the disease in 1817. It's such a visible condition, but at the same time, and one of my mentors was Bill Langston, the famous neurologist in the United States who discovered the young drug addicts, who developed MPTP-induced Parkinsonism. And Bill used a metaphor which is an iceberg. And the part of the iceberg that's above the surface is the motor symptoms. It's the tremor, it's the gait, it's the stiffness. All the rest of the iceberg, which you know is much larger, is depression, slowness in thinking, constipation, slow bowel movements, urinary incontinence, pain, sleep disorders, sexual changes. It's a massively complex condition, and the part underwater, which you don't see at the surface, is what determines your quality of life, and that merits our attention.
What of your patients you see, which is the most troublesome symptom, do you think?
Well, that's personalized. Right. And you know, I think this is really a time of personalized precision medicine. And people think precision medicine is sequencing your DNA and tailoring a drug specifically to your genetic profile. Yes, that is precision medicine. But I think precision medicine is asking what matters most to you.
Right.
Yeah. So what we are doing in my center, and I can recommend this deeply to all of you, prior to your rare visits to the neurologist, think carefully what you want to discuss. And there might be 10, 20, 30 things you'd like to see improved, because that's how complex Parkinson's is. My urgent recommendation to you is build your top 3, even better your top 2, even better your top 1. Because if you empty the bucket with problems to your doctor, they feel overwhelmed. The reflex is a prescription for another drug, and out you are, and you're back in the parking lot and your problems are not solved. Think carefully about your problem number 1, not in terms of symptoms or signs. So don't tell me, I want my less tremor. What you say is, I want to play chess. In order to play chess, you need less tremor, because otherwise you can't put the rook, in the right place. Does it make sense? And then the next time you do number 2 on the priority list. But you have to guide the doctor, help the poor doctor, because if you empty the bucket, nothing will happen.
Yeah, I think there is an onus on us as people with the condition to be able to convey the condition, but it's a real challenge, right? It's a very daunting thing having Parkinson's, and it's really difficult to explain it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Dave, what's your number 1?
I think anxiety at the moment,
yeah.
And I get dystonia in my foot, which isn't too good. My foot bends over to the right hand side, and I find, it's difficult to walk and painful to walk, and I used to love walking a long way. I still walk the dog and everything, but dystonia is the big one for me.
Yeah.
But this is a beautiful example. It's treatable. Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying there's a quick solution. Yeah. It's something I can look at.
Right.
So if we had 10 minutes and you emptied the bucket, including the foot, nothing would happen.
Right.
If we talk for 10 minutes about the foot, I can think about a solution. For example, botulinum toxin. We could talk about how this changes with your medication cycle. Inversion dystonia of the foot is a treatable symptom of Parkinson's. As an example.
It's a good point, actually, because I've got this tendency when I'm sitting outside the neurologist's office and I'm thinking, what am I going to talk about? I take out my phone and make this long list of symptoms and things that I think are bothering me and impact me, and it's a very long list. And then when I get there, I kind of either I just freeze,
exactly,
or I just blurt things out, and like you said, he or she doesn't know what to do with that.
Organizing your thoughts becomes more difficult when you've got Parkinson's, yes, particularly under stressful conditions.
Yes.
So at home, on a Sunday afternoon,
yes,
you'd build your top 3, top 2, or top 1.
Right.
And you carefully orchestrate it, and that's what you tell your doctor or the nurse. Because don't forget about the Parkinson nurses, right? They're worth their weight in gold.
For me, my nurse is more valuable than any other professional that I have access to, and my physiotherapist.
We overrate the importance of consultants. I'm a consultant. We're good at diagnosis, but that's been established, and then you're done. We're very good at pharmacotherapy, but what you need is, we're going to talk hopefully about holistic care.
Are,
and many issues The consultant has no idea, with all respect. So let us do diagnosis, pharmacotherapy, but speak to your nurse about all your other problems and let the nurse be the director of the orchestra. The nurse cannot solve all the problems, but he or she will know who else can, hopefully, and then direct you in the right direction.
You say neurologists are good at diagnosis. Some aren't. Some don't break the news too well. Mine asked me if I had a big mortgage, how old my kids were. Kids were 7 and 4. And they told me I had Parkinson's, and gave me a pack of pills, and that was it, the first guy I saw. So not everyone's as good as you, Bas. There's some terrible diagnosis stories out there.
It's a difficult thing, though, to be fair.
No, but I think, people choose a career, a medical career for the right reasons. There are no assholes. No. And yes, there are better and doctors in certain skills, but I will never speak poorly of my colleagues. Everybody's working hard to make the most of it.
They are. But the sad truth is a lot of people who have that experience on at diagnosis. It takes them a long time, or it's not broken to them perhaps in the most sympathetic or empathetic way. And it's a real challenge on all sides. And this was your diagnosis, right, Dave? Coming up to 14 years ago, right?
Yeah, 9/47 and 26th of January.
You remember it well?
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. I remember crying walking across Wimbledon Common and thinking my life's over. But my life wasn't over. I've walked coast to coast. I've raised nearly £500,000 for Parkinson's charities. I've swum with turtles on the Barrier Reef. I've walked with Masai Mara in the desert and things. So I've lived my life to the full, and that's important. Met Kuhan, done the podcast as well. So.
Yeah. But you're saying something really important, and this is a shout out to Parkinson's UK, who are doing an amazing job for all of you folks. Parkinson's UK are amazing. What I've said in Philadelphia, where I gave a keynote plenary lecture on holistic care, I said the 3 words, "you have Parkinson's," feel initially like a death sentence, right? Your hopes are gone. Your dreams of post-pension, traveling the world, and suddenly everything implodes. And I think the moral responsibility on us as doctors and nurses to take time to convey that diagnosis, to give you hope and perspective, to direct you to trustworthy information is essential. And that responsibility bestowed upon us is enormous. The reality is that in Holland, even today, 2024, people say, "You have Parkinson's. Here's the prescription for levodopa," and off you go. And that's a crime.
Levodopa was invented in 1967 as well, wasn't it? So Harold Wilson was Prime Minister. Man landed on the moon and was still getting the same drugs my dad was on.
It's older than you. That's how old it is, right?
You know who was born in 1967?
Is that you, Bas?
Yeah.
Very good
Excellent.
Year for
So
how
isn't that
poignant.
weird? I entered the Parkinson field by sheer coincidence. But in 1967, levodopa was introduced. The Honen-Jaar stages are from 1967.
Yes.
And there's a very good Macallan whiskey from 1967. It's all sheer coincidence, of course.
But you had a particular incentive to get into neurology, didn't you, Bas?
Sure. My mother had multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
So my parents always said, your first word you ever uttered was mama, then daddy, and then neurologist. That's my 3rd word.
Is that true?
Yeah, well, almost. It's almost
Good
true.
story.
Yeah. And
It wasn't movement disorder specialist then.
No. But seriously, I'm a very passionate person, and I wanted to cure my mum. And then by sheer coincidence, because I wanted to go abroad, I shifted to Parkinson's. The moment I started to work with people and families with Parkinson's, I was impressed.
Yes.
I was impressed by the complexity of the disease. I was particularly impressed by how nice you are, how resilient you are, how creative you are in finding solutions, in dealing with this ordeal. And I forgot all about MS.
And we were talking backstage. Dave, you got a similar story, right? Your youngest George.
Yeah, my youngest George he said, "Dad, I want to find a cure for you," and he started doing neuroscience at UCL. So, 18 years old, brilliant.
He's so. I mean, every time he tells this story, his face just lights up. You can see how.
In Dutch, we say, your nose curls up with pride. You can tell. If you zoom in, you can see the nose.
Excellent. Just finishing off the diagnosis piece, I just want to read something to you that I wrote about what I call my D-Day, because I think it might be relevant to some of the things we've just been talking about. My D-Day experience shaped so much of the years that followed. It contributed to my denial. My isolation left me feeling helpless. It haunts me to this day, and I see it echoed amongst the newly diagnosed I meet now. Talk of a honeymoon period just left me with a sense that the clock was ticking, a countdown to a fate I couldn't control. Granted, there is no right way to deliver a Parkinson's diagnosis, but surely we can do better than this. And I mention that and I read that out because so much of living well starts on that day. And you're right, we're not giving enough information. I mean, it's impossible to do it. There's no right way to do this, right?
No.
But we have to leave the individual with a sense of purpose, not a sense that the clock is ticking, right? And I don't know what the right answer to that is, but how can we do better in this?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is, I think people deserve time when the diagnosis is conveyed. And if the time is not immediately there, when I give people the diagnosis, I take at least half an hour, and I tell them, come back to me within 2 weeks.
Yes.
For a second call. Go to these websites which have trustworthy information. It would be Parkinson's UK here.
Yes.
Write up all your questions and come back in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Because that initial investment pays off in the long run.
Yes.
And I think people deserve that kind of guidance early on in the disease. The second thing is I tell people you have to accept the diagnosis.
Yes.
People who keep fighting that reality are worse off. But this is critical. Acceptance is not resignation.
Right on cue.
You should always remain fighters and remain activists. So accept the diagnosis, but be an activist and be a fighter. Not against the diagnosis, but against the poor circumstances that are present in healthcare and the poor funding, etc.
Everybody talks about exercise. How much exercise should we be doing? What should we be doing to live well with Parkinson's?
Right. So that's, and again, Parkinson's UK can do a wonderful job here. They probably already are, but, a doctor will tell you, exercise more, and says, now bugger off. And then you're home and say, but how? And for example, there are many challenges. So just telling people, go ahead and exercise is not enough. You should make it very explicit. I will tell you a few examples of why exercising can be difficult. One reason is that the nerves that go to the heart are impaired in people with Parkinson's. Now, that's nothing to worry about, not at all. It just practically means many people with Parkinson's cannot crank up their heart rate beyond 100. So if you titrate your exercise to heart rate, which is commonplace, it's a frustrating exercise. So people need to tell you that. Second, you need more medication prior to exercise to get a decent workout. You cannot exercise in an off state. So if you have a particular medication regime and you're planning to do a workout, it's often helpful to take, for example, 125 milligrams of dispersible Metapar just 20 minutes prior to your workout, so you're in a good on state and get a better workout. The other thing that I tell people is there are two types of exercise. One is the aerobic exercise, in plain language, panting. And the right dose, don't titrate it to your heart, is you exercise and your sentences become a bit shorter, but you can still maintain a conversation. That's exactly the right dose for 30 minutes. That's the aerobic component. But if you don't like the aerobic component, the sheer volume of physical activities is the second type of exercise. So simply taking 10,000 steps is better for Parkinson's than 6,000 steps. So that's useful. And then the third element, which is really cool, in the words of my two sons, is that there's such a thing as exercise snacks. So we think of snacks like a Mars bar or Snickers. It turns out that not taking the escalator but climbing the stairs is a snack. It's a 1-minute snack. And 30 times 1 minute is as good as 1 block of 30 minutes. So if you have a busy schedule, if you're still working, take snacks, exercise snacks. And the sum of those snacks is as good as 1 block. Now, those are practical recommendations that you need to receive rather than just a mere advice, go ahead and exercise.
Can I offer one more recommendation on exercise? Because a lot of us have challenges with apathy, right? Just getting up, getting out, doing something is a real challenge. But I always think the best type of exercise is, or rather the only thing better than just exercise itself is group exercise or exercise with a buddy. Dave and I play tennis every week, and I don't know about you, Dave, but...
And who beats the shit out of who?
I normally beat the shit out of him, yeah.
Although, I think you found the last match, Dave. I won. I was on a massive losing streak, but the last one...
We need footage. We want objective evidence.
He's very meek and mild, but on a tennis court he gets really aggressive, effing and blinding.
I do.
Come on.
I swore quite loudly on the last in the last match, but I ended up winning, which was great. But it gives me a buzz, and that's the point, right? And that buzz is, for me, like it's like medicine, and it's like medicine, but without the side effects, right?
We crawl onto the court, we're limping and stuff. And when we play tennis, we're running around. It's amazing. This is we haven't got Parkinson's.
I always think, what must it be like for the other guys on court when they see us, right? Because you'll be barely walking. I'll be very dyskinetic or have a tremor, and then just throw the ball onto the court. And I mean, this guy just moves around like a professional athlete, and he's 50.
That takes a lot of imagination.
I like this guy.
Got nothing, you Bas.
Hey, just before we move on, I just want to get...
But just quickly on exercise. Why would you... Because I'm so passionate about exercise, We think you go to the doctor and say, cure me, give me drugs. No, the drugs are important, but you are the most important person when it comes to your treatment. Exercise is critical for 3 reasons. One is generic health benefits. Helps to prevent cardiovascular disease, maintains bone strength, helps to prevent dementia, and a lot. Second, evidence-based suppression of symptoms of the disease. Better sleep, less constipation, fewer motor symptoms. It works like a drug. And thirdly, there's really exciting work at my own center that has shown that if you exercise faithfully, the decline over time is reduced. And with brain scans, we have shown that if you exercise at least 3 times a week, the brain makes new connections between the diseased basal ganglia and the healthy cortex. So if you're on that treadmill, on that bicycle, on the tennis court, and you're not motivated to exercise, think of my words. Those new connections. If there is one treatment that may slow down progression of Parkinson's at this time, it's not a drug, it's exercise. Keep it up.
I mean, I heard, and these messages. This is amazing because I don't think people fully appreciate it. And when I was in the early years, I didn't really appreciate those messages because we're all told to exercise, right? Everybody in general life from a young age, eat well, sleep well, do exercise. But when you have Parkinson's, these things really, really matter, right? It shouldn't go over our heads. You wouldn't miss a dose of medication, so why would you miss a dose of exercise? Is the way I look at it.
Exactly. So, and people often ask me about the right dose. Is my mic still on? Yeah. So there's 2. The trials were based on 3 times a week. In my clinic, I tell people in my clinic, you exercise every day. And why every day? If you exercise 3 times a week, there's always tomorrow. Yeah. If you have to exercise every day, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You do it every day. You build it into your routine. If I would develop Parkinson's tomorrow, I would live on the treadmill. I would honestly try to live on the treadmill. And of course, build it up. People who run a marathon start with 100 yards. So if your Parkinson's doesn't allow you to exercise for 30 minutes, build it up. Start small, think big. Build it up like a real athlete.
Excellent. Just before we go on, we'd like your participation as well. If you scan this QR code, particularly if you're watching online, there's a question that we're asking you, which is effectively about what is it that enables you to live well with Parkinson's, and we'll show the answers towards the end of the session. So when you have a moment, feel free to participate in that way.
It's when I blank. I feel like I don't have Parkinson's.
Yeah.
So.
What's your blank out of interest?
Bruce Springsteen is my blank. So I go. I go see Bruce. I've seen him 27 times now, and he's my Parky Bruce buddy down here. We go a lot.
Cool.
Just bought some tickets.
Yeah,
next year, right?
Yeah, fantastic. When I see him, it's amazing. My body starts moving. I can dance. It's just brilliant. So
it's the happiness dopamine is happiness neurotransmitter. Yes. What is your favourite song?
I think I've got so many favourite songs.
Pick one.
Jungle Land, I think.
Oh.
Jungle Land with Clarence Clemens sax solo in it.
I don't know that, Dave. Can you give us a rendition?
No.
Show us your dance moves then. Maybe a bit later. But music is a big theme, and
I always say, don't live in a silent house.
Yeah.
I've the radio on.
Got the radio on, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I love music, and music makes me feel good, and having music around the house is brilliant for me.
By the same token, just don't stay in the house all the time, because I was guilty in the early years of just staying at home, getting more isolated, getting more lonely.
Yeah.
And, the thing about loneliness, I'd say, is you don't have to be alone to be lonely. This condition really does impose a sense of isolation on you, and that was really to my detriment. And when I started accepting the condition, as we spoke about before, really that's when I don't know if it's living well, but certainly, just things changed for me at that point. And, I don't want to just say just because it's here, but, meeting Dave or having a Parkinson's buddy makes a huge difference, because just talking to somebody that just gets it in a way that maybe your friends and family might not get as supportive as they are, it makes a huge difference. Empathy always trumps sympathy, so don't be afraid to reach out to fellow Parkies, because I know it's daunting at first, particularly when you're seeing people with that are more progressed, and there'll be people in the audience here and watching online looking at me and Dave, looking at every symptom and thinking, right, I've just been newly diagnosed, he's 12 years in, so that's what I'm going to be like. He's 14 years in, I'm going to be like that. But it's so different for everybody, and there's no one size fits all in Parkinson's, right?
Well, can I chime in there? I had the privilege of writing a commissioned review for The Lancet on Parkinson's disease. It came out 3 years ago. We submitted it under the title Parkinson's Diseases, which The Lancet felt was too provocative. So I had to change it back to Parkinson's disease. But what we said in that paper is there are 12 million Parkinson's diseases in the world, namely as many as there are people on the planet with this disease. Yes, if you like it, hang out with your buddies, but no, never, ever look at somebody else's Parkinson's and think this is reflective of what is happening to you. You've all got your own unique disease. The reason I never get bored, people tell me, are you never bored? Because you only run Parkinson's clinics. And I'm never bored, because the disease is different, the wishes and priorities, the way people deal with it, how the family deals, you're all different. Never, ever mirror yourself towards another person. You're unique and different, and that's important.
Yeah. Our condition is as individual as we are, right?
Yeah.
Even just looking at me and Dave, similar length of living with Parkinson's, but our symptoms are very different, aren't they? Mm. Yeah. We talked about music, and it's a real passion for you. And one of the previous episodes of the podcast, Two Parkies in a Pod, was Dave and I singing. If you want to go and check that episode out, that's
I wouldn't.
And also we've had a few episodes around music, and I was fortunate enough to take part in a research study that was around music called Tremors versus Tremors, and there's a short 4 or 5 minute film from that which we can play now, hopefully.
It's suitable for young children
as
well?
It is PG rated, absolutely.
So the basic idea behind the project is to look at the intersection between how mood influences movement disorders, and specifically in the context of Parkinson's. We are taking people who have Parkinson's measuring their tremors that they are experiencing. In order to do that, we're using some devices called accelerometers. These just measure change in motion in one axis or other. We set up and attach an accelerometer to each arm and each leg. And then we work through a series of staged movements where we typically see tremor, so either in rest or posture or with movement or with specific actions. And then we're going to use those to create a soundtrack based specifically on their recording of their tremor. And then later on, they're going to listen back to it.
So we received a large amount of data from the tremor recordings, and through a customized audio software, we managed to translate them into one-dimensional waves.
Okay, Lau, let's add the tremor to it.
This gave us a musical element that has been infused with the Tremors characteristics, which we then used to create the 5 personalized songs. We played around a lot with different genres, moods, and melodies to match the songs with each participant.
Sipping tea, rain and gems in the mirror, holding hands, got the Milky Way for
I think in the end we created something very unique and special for each one of them, and we are excited to see the results.
Thank you very much.
Claire, John, Pukesh, Stephanie, Kuhan. This is a reflection of your musical preferences and personality. It was tailor-made for you based on your own tremor data embedded in the song's core.
I love it. I've found it really powerful, very moving, as you can tell. It made me think about how strong I am, really. As I was listening to it, my tremor was going because I was excited, I was enjoying it, and it was exactly in rhythm with the music. It was incredible. It was just, yeah, blown away.
That is my soundtrack, and I hope I would stay more calmer than I have been in the past. So I'm looking forward to listen to this music as regular as possible.
I wasn't expecting to be impressed, to be honest. I thought I can also hear the tremor in the background in the intro. It works. It doesn't distort it too much. It looks like it's meant to be there.
It's not often you can hear your Parkinson's. I feel a physical change in my symptoms when I have an emotional reaction to things, and there's nothing more emotional than a music that's based on me.
I think when I came to this project, first of all, I had quite a narrow view of what some of the objectives were. And I think the participants' reactions really opened my eyes to the different ways and the uniqueness in which they responded. And again, I think it really highlighted how different people took different things away from this and how it helped them in slightly different ways. We need a holistic approach to treatments. It's not all about medications, but there are a much broader range of strategies and therapies available that we should be using. And I hope that this project both gives us the ability to communicate that better to a broader audience, but also take forward some of these ideas in developing new therapies and treatments in the future.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, right?
Just wow.
Just wow. I'll just say two things about that. the project was called Tremors versus Tremors. An album has been produced with the 5 songs, and they gave me a vinyl record. Unfortunately, I've got nothing to play it on, but it's also available through Apple Music and Spotify and other music platforms. It's been listened to almost 100,000 times already in terms of plays and streams. And the beauty of this is all the royalties are going to charity Parkinson's UK. So I do encourage you to listen to it. And the other thing I would say is this is research, and this is taking part in research. Research doesn't have to be boring, right, Bas?
No, it doesn't. And I think the time that research was done, well intended by researchers for people with Parkinson's, is beyond us. I think in my group, and increasingly elsewhere, we do research with people with Parkinson's. And there was a beautiful paper by Sir Ian Chalmers in the Lancet about medical waste in research. And medical waste in research was that we design studies that are maybe meaningless to you. It fulfills the curiosity of the scientist. The study design is often not tailored to your abilities and to your needs. And when the results do not please us, we don't publish it. And you have the right that the results are published, even if the outcome is unwanted, because the community needs to know. So in our group, we only submit new research grants together with people with Parkinson's. When we have the money, we design the study together with people with Parkinson's. We interpret the results together, and they tell us, you better damn publish your data, because we have a right to get it published.
Absolutely, absolutely. Research should be shaped by people that are affected by this condition. And I just want to say, because there's a lot of people that don't take part in research because it can be quite daunting again. But, you know, I found it fun in some cases, and the opportunity to connect with professionals like Bas, and also fellow people with the condition in the community is just so rewarding, isn't it?
We've been prodded and poked by some of the leading experts in World Parkinson's, you know, so volunteering for all sorts of things.
Yeah, but just one quick thing. So not just the people here today, everybody listening at home and maybe listening on later on, we need people with Parkinson's to participate in research, so your contribution is essential. What you should realize, and this is not always clear, is you participate to create a better world after you. Don't participate in research because you secretly hope to gain benefits yourself. You might be randomized to the control arm. You might be randomized to the active treatment, which could have adverse effects, and we've seen a couple of examples in recent years. So it's really an altruistic approach. Critical, essential. We're immensely grateful for your participation, but you have to be aware you do it for others and not for yourself.
We're going to take questions in a minute, but just before we do, I just want to talk about something that I've noticed in myself and other people with Parkinson's. I seem to have developed this creative streak, and for me it comes out in photography, but I've seen it come out in poetry, in painting, all kinds of ways. Creativity is a thing in Parkinson's, right, Bas?
Oh, absolutely. So this is a fascinating topic. It's also a daunting topic. So dopamine is responsible for movement, but also for creativity. And what we know is that people who were never artists in their life and who were treated post-diagnosis with dopaminergic therapy for the first time become artists. And there are museums, for example, one in Grenoble in France, with art produced by people with Parkinson's under the influence of dopaminergic therapy, who'd never been artists. And it's amazing art. I mean, amazing art. Photography, sculpturing, painting, you name it. Now the question is, are you the artist or are you a chemical artist? And that's a provocative, difficult question. And honestly, I don't know the answer. I think that if you hadn't had the disease, which probably has a lead-up phase of at least 20, 30 years, I'll come to that in a minute, if you had never had the disease, you would have been that artist. So I think the dopaminergic therapy restores what you would have been otherwise. But am I 100% certain? I'm not. So there is this painting, I took a picture of it, it's in Portugal, of a man. So creativity and impulse control disorders, addiction, are closely related. So there was a banker who became an artist under the influence of medication, but he also developed punding, which is obsessive compulsive behavior, in his case, memorizing numbers in telephone books, which was terrible. And based on the pages of the damn telephone books, he painted something 7 by 3 meters with big black paint. He painted, "Who am I?" If you come to think of it, it's mind-boggling. Is he the artist, or is he a chemical artist? People even decline deep brain stimulation because they say, "I don't want to become a cyborg," which I don't think is the case. But we need to be aware of these emotions. And so yes, there is a bout of creativity under the influence of medication. And we have 2 studies in our group to show that people who opt to become an artist at the age of 30 or 20 have a lower risk of developing Parkinson's years later.
Wow,
incredible.
I don't think that producing art is protective. Maybe those people at age 20 who chose to become an artist had lots and lots of dopamine, which also protected them from dropping below the critical threshold to develop Parkinson's. Right? Does it make sense? So it's more a biomarker for having a lot of dopamine.
Before we open the floor to questions, alternative therapies, CBD, cannabis, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Can you briefly, you've been doing a talk about that recently, can you just briefly go through?
So I don't think the term alternative medicine is appropriate.
Right.
I think there's one medicine. And what I introduced in Philadelphia was the concept of credibility. And credibility is the rationale for an intervention and the evidence behind it. So levodopa has high credibility. There's a lack of dopamine in the brain and you correct it, and there are trials where levodopa was compared to placebo and levodopa was better. So levodopa is highly credible. Swimming with dolphins has a low credibility, although it's not zero, because swimming is exercise and dolphins are friendly animals that may relieve anxiety. No, I'm serious. But there are no trials. So swimming with dolphins has a low credibility. Now, we've got limited money to spend on research. So the debate should not be whether we spend money on levodopa. We should. The debate should, at this moment, not be on dolphins. The debate is on the 50 shades of grey. I said that in a provocative way in Philadelphia. In between those 2 extremes. And there's cannabis. There's mucuna pruriens. There's blue light therapy. There is... And interestingly, and that's where the debate... And if the rationale is sound... And if there are anecdotes that people will benefit, which is, for example, the case with cannabis, then we have the responsibility to do proper research to show the merits or to disprove it so that people can be alleviated and
so
stop it.
Until the point we've proved it or disproved it, what should people do now, for example, with cannabis?
Yeah. So yesterday I did a podcast for the Movers and Shakers, and there was a question on cannabis.
Who's that?
It's their competitors. It's like Manchester City, Leeds United playing.
Manchester United, yeah.
Manchester United. I gather Leeds United are in the Premier League, are they now?
No,
many years.
Championship.
I knew that, of course. Just teasing. No, so there are anecdotes that people benefit from cannabis, which means that there is smoke. Whether there's a fire, I don't know. The trials do not show that the groups on cannabis do better than people who are on placebo. The problem with the way we approach science is that evidence is based on group averages, but you're not a group average. So, for example, if in the cannabis trial 5 people responded brilliantly, 20 didn't respond at all, and 5 had a negative effect, the net effect is a zero-sum game. And I think personalized medicine is looking at individualized responses. So trial designs need to change. I'm not saying an RCT, a randomized clinical trial, is useless, but I think we need to move beyond it. And I think there could be a role for cannabis, but the trials also show that it causes drowsiness, hallucinations, cognitive decline. It doesn't come for free. So people sometimes think, oh, why don't I try it? If it doesn't benefit me, it won't harm me. That's not true. It may cost you money. It may cost you time and energy, and they can have adverse effects. So my urgent recommendation is speak to your physician when you try something so that at least we know. Because the alternative treatments, which again I think is a bad term, can have adverse effects or can even interact with the medication that we're prescribing.
It's an important topic, absolutely. Just joking aside, when we talk about podcasts, I think the more voices that we hear from and the more faces that we see with this condition, it's got to be to our benefit, right? I say that because a lot of people hide away with this condition. So I'm all for, podcasts and events like this. I think we should be doing more of it, because when we were diagnosed, there was nothing like this, right?
Nothing at all.
That's part of the reason why we started the podcast, because we wanted to hear from people talking about the day-to-day aspects of the condition.
Yep. And what the two of you are doing, and really you two are to be commended for it, is raising awareness. And when we started this discussion, I think why I love this community so much is the people are really nice. You're wonderful people, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, but I think you might be too nice. So in the book Ending Parkinson's Disease that we published a few years ago with Ray Dorsey and Michael Oken, we drew a comparison to the HIV community. And the HIV community in the 80s chained themselves to the front doors of pharma companies and demanded better treatments. And it helped to change AIDS from a deadly disease into a chronic condition. Why don't you all march with your tens of thousands to Downing Street and demand more money for this disease?
Well, I mean, that's happened recently, and we should keep on at that. It's almost like a movement for a movement disorder, right? We need to shout loud.
And we should be loud. We should all be activists. No resignation. I hope I hope one day that I'll be unemployed, that I'll lose my job. Because it means Parkinson's is gone, right?
Absolutely. Before you lose your job, should we hear from some of the audience and take some questions?
Please. Yes, please.
Shafat.
Oh, hang on. Wait for a
mic. Wait for the mic, sorry.
Yeah, that's your physical exercise, Claire.
Hi. I wanted to ask, you said that motor symptoms are preceded by the disease, the disease not manifesting, but being present for 20 to 30 years. I had my first motor symptoms when I was about 31. Does that mean I've had it more or less since birth? I don't have any of the genetic known genes at the moment.
Right. So what we know is that the prodromal period, the lead-up phase, is long. It's at least 10 years. It's probably closer to 20, 30 years. We know that in the lead-up phase, it's particularly the non-motor symptoms, slow bowel movements, loss of smell, in particular acting out your dreams. An isolated REM sleep behavior disorder has about an 80% risk of converting into either Parkinson's disease or a related disorder within the next 10, 20 years. And yes, there are some motor symptoms that may antedate the moment that a neurologist formally makes the diagnosis. Ray Kennedy, a famous football player from Liverpool, had a reduced arm swing years before the diagnosis. That's a motor symptom. So yes, motor symptoms can precede the moment the neurologist makes the diagnosis. All the research shows that motor symptoms are a relatively late phenomenon. So the non-motor features are much earlier. But yes, there might have been a time when you had motor symptoms before the doctor made the diagnosis. And we know there's a doctor delay, particularly in young people, particularly in women, And that delay is also a waste of time, because that's a time when you were anxious, you noticed changes in your body, and nobody could tell you what it was.
Yeah. It's interesting because I used to present the darts on Sky Sports, and before I was diagnosed, someone said to me, your Lego hand, what's with the Lego hand? And it hadn't been diagnosed at that time. And I look back at footage from years ago, and you can see Parkinson's coming on before I knew I had it.
Exactly.
So go back 10 years and see some slow hand. It's incredible.
I always think hindsight's a wonderful thing when it comes to recognising some of your early symptoms.
I wouldn't want to have been diagnosed earlier, though, because...
Yes. Well, I mean, there is... Let's just talk about that for a second, because there is new developments in the world of Parkinson's that is allowing us, or shortly will allow us, to diagnose much earlier. But to Dave's point, what is the point of that if there is no treatment?
So, yes, there are now ways of diagnosing Parkinson's. Well, finding people in the prodromal phase of Parkinson's, because it's at that moment, it's not Parkinson's disease yet, although that definition is changing as we speak.
So prodromal is before they're showing any signs?
It's before. Testing for this, for example, you might be worried about your children or your brother or your sister. Testing is technically becoming more and more feasible, but the only consequence is that you are now eligible to participate in trials where we are testing disease-modifying treatments in the hope of postponing the moment of the real diagnosis. And perhaps avoiding it altogether. It doesn't have any consequences for personal care. I hope that is clear. Regardless of whether you have been tested or whether your family member has been tested, what I recommend to family members who are worried and want to reduce the risk is physical activity, exercise, which is not only a treatment when you have the disease, it helps to prevent the disease. And other associated factors is a Mediterranean diet, a few cups of coffee, steering away from toxic chemicals as much as you can, pesticides, trichloroethylene, air pollution, head trauma, and avoiding excessive dairy intake. Those factors are associated with a lower risk of Parkinson's. We don't know whether there's a causal relationship. So there's a word of caution here, but this is what I recommend to anybody who wants to try and reduce the risk of future Parkinson's.
Food is medicine, isn't it?
Food is medicine. So one of the new kids on the block is nutrition. So we've talked about stress, we've talked about exercise. The third major lifestyle component is nutrition. So let's quickly talk about nutrition. The key thing for all of you is a diet rich in fibers and lots of fluid, at least 2 liters, half a gallon a day. That's difficult, but you need that in order to promote regular bowel movements. If you do not have regular bowel movements, it will lead to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and those bacteria start to convert levodopa into dopamine in the lumen of the gut, which means your pills leave your body with the stools without ever reaching your brain. The more grey my hair is becoming, the more fascinated and intrigued I become by the role of the gut as interfering with the efficacy of oral medication. It is mandatory that you have regular bowel movements without too much effort. Anything less is unacceptable. Speak to your physician. But the tricks are exercise, ample fluids, and a diet rich in fibers. A Mediterranean diet helps to prevent the disease, but it's also in 2 studies associated with a better prognosis after diagnosis. If you don't know what a Mediterranean diet is, eat like a Greek, but not with a souvlaki. It's the salmon, it's the veggies, it's the olive oil, the nuts. That's an important diet. Probably a biological pesticide-free diet is important. Pesticides are not only an important cause of Parkinson's, there are at least 2 studies now that show that if you already have the diagnosis and you're still exposed to pesticides, you have a worse prognosis, which makes sense because if you have limited brain cells alive left, you want to do everything to protect them. So steer away from toxic chemicals as much as you can is also important.
There's a factory not far from here that makes a chemical that's banned in this country, you know.
Paraquat. And that's criminal. That's criminal. The fact that people in the United States, in Canada, in Australia and New Zealand, where I was, are still using paraquat under the influence of industry. And look, politicians are probably okay people, but I'm not happy with industry. They're making, and I'm going to use the word, shitloads of money over your heads. And that's not fair. That's not right. We need better regulatory action to test for the toxicity of pesticides in isolation, but probably would need to look at cocktails. In Dutch farmhouses, there are over 100 different pesticides. What is the net sum of 100 pesticides doing to your health? We don't know. So I'm a reasonable scientist, I think. I'm not saying that currently used pesticides are the cause of Parkinson's. What I do know is they've never been proven to be safe. So I'm convinced that if your industry, and if you want to sell a product that's designed to kill weeds, fungi, insects, and you want to make billions of dollars, the obligation is up to them to prove it's safe with proper experiments before you release it onto the market. What is happening now is it's up to scientists like myself to prove that it's causing Parkinson's. But that's horrendously difficult. The burden of proof should be with them. Ban these pesticides.
I think on this particular matter, it's okay to get political because the irony is that paraquat, one of the culprits, is made in the UK, banned in the UK, but can be exported outside of the UK.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
And for example, pesticides that have been banned in Europe are dumped onto the market in Africa, where combined with an aging population, Parkinson's is exploding. That's criminal. Levodopa is not accessible to people in Africa. That's madness. It costs nearly nothing. Why don't we make sure that all people in Africa and other areas of the world have at least access to levodopa?
Imagine a life without levodopa. You know,
it's incredible.
Yeah, crazy. Shall we take another question?
Yeah.
At the back.
Hello.
Hi. You were talking earlier about making Parkinson's more aware. Why don't Parkinson's UK put pressure on TV companies to include somebody with Parkinson's, like they did with HIV and various other illnesses, which builds the purpose, I suppose, in terms of fundraising and people's general awareness, to try and get some help that way. Likewise, in major films. I mean, these days,
sure,
the major films are just as good.
Can I ask Dave, what's stopping you going back to presenting TV? Because you've been on stage here for over an hour now, and you're doing a great job.
I think pressure is a big thing, you know, and anxiety is a big thing as well. So I was on air I used to be on air for 6 hours, and it was hard, you know. I'd be trying to do my tie-up and stuff when I was going on air, and I'd be struggling to try and get my cufflinks on, and it'd be countdown. And I didn't need the pressure anymore. It's really stressful. But yeah, people should be seen on film and stuff. Definitely.
So in answer to the gentleman's question, which is very good, let me emphasize, I'm deeply impressed with what Parkinson's UK are doing for you. Yeah. You are blessed with one of the best Parkinson's associations on the globe. And yes, I would like to bundle forces to see if we can be more visible on television, on radio. We need to be more loud. We need to be more visible. And if I can play a role and help and contribute, absolutely. Call me. I'll be here to help.
And Bas, am I right in assuming that you've got, do I remember rightly, you have your own TV?
Yeah.
Yeah, Parkinson's?
We have our own Parkinson TV channel.
Great.
So we do live web-based television. It's called Parkinson TV. We've done over 100 episodes.
Yeah.
It's like a talk show setting.
Yeah.
People with Parkinson's decide about the topics.
Yeah.
Not me. It's the people with Parkinson's. We always have a person with Parkinson's at the table.
Yeah.
There's a host. There's an expert dedicated to the topic. And there's me as the sidekick. I'm the guy who knows a little bit about everything, you know. And it's lovely. We have about a couple of hundred people watching live, but we have over 10,000 people watching offline. We've done 3 episodes in America in English, have been viewed over 1 million times.
Wonderful.
And it's an effect. So, for example, if you came to my clinic and you said, what about genetics and Parkinson's? I say, go to episode 8 of Parkinson TV.
Yeah.
Review it. If you still have questions, come back to me.
Right. So you've done it in Europe, you've done it in the States, so presumably doing an episode here in the UK is next, right?
Look, why don't we do a Parkinson TV episode together?
Let's do it.
Perfect,
Let's do it.
Can I make a suggestion for 2 lovely hosts?
Perfect.
Who could we find?
With the shirt.
Yeah.
Sorry, how do people access it offline? Is it on YouTube, or how do people find it?
It's the Dutch episode.
Mediaflix.
Mediaflix is also sending it. So it's the Dutch episodes, again, 108 episodes, www.parkinsontv.nl, but it's in Dutch. The American episodes are on YouTube and also Mediflix. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Claire, what about the online community? Anything going there?
Yes, we do have some questions. We've got a couple that are related, so I'll ask both. So Anne asks, my husband has multiple symptoms exacerbated by severe back pain, which limits his ability to exercise. What would you suggest? And then Helga asks, it must be very hard for people with advanced Parkinson's, for whom simply managing to sit up or swallow food, to listen to the messages about exercise and socialising. What is your message and advice for people who are living with more advanced symptoms?
All right. The first question is about back pain. So when you've got Parkinson's, you really should live the life of an elite athlete, and everything needs to be right. And absolutely pain interferes with the ability to exercise. Low back pain is probably not directly related to Parkinson's, although the stooped posture can be one of the reasons why people develop low back pain. You need to address that issue first with a neurologist to see whether there's anything wrong in the lower back and in the lower spine. Low back pain is not easily treatable, but it is treatable, and to get the circumstances right so that you can then subsequently exercise. yes, the question about later stages, more complex stages of Parkinson's is well taken. The advice would be is that support is always possible, and if you've got a later phase of Parkinson's, and of course running on a treadmill becomes impossible, but staying mentally active, perhaps doing an exercise on a hand bike. There are simple foot bikes when you sit in your regular chair and you do foot exercises. There's always something possible. And this really boils down to personalized precision medicine. Don't look at what you cannot do, see what you can still do. And I understand later stages of Parkinson's are difficult, complex, and devastating. But I try to take a positive attitude and ask my team to look at what is still possible instead of looking at the impossible.
Yeah.
I always say to people with Parkinson's, don't mourn what you can't do, celebrate what you can. The littlest things can make a big difference. Yeah. There's a great book by a guy called Henry Fraser, Little Big Things. It's worth reading. And he was 17, he dived into a wave on holiday, broke his neck, paralysed from the neck down, and he paints with his mouth. And I read his book and think, if you can live a good life, still be happy, I can do too.
But I just want to say, in answer to the second question, and it really touches me because, I'm an unofficial carrier of a mutation in the gene for optimism, and I really think we can, must, and will do things better. The reality is that Parkinson's in a later stage is an ugly disease. So even this optimist realizes that there are huge challenges when you live with Parkinson's, and I'm not ignoring that. So the people asking that question are spot on. It's a difficult disease. It's tough to live with Parkinson's as a family. You have the disease not just by yourself, your spouse, your friends, your children. Everybody has Parkinson's. And that you can tell those people I'm motivated to the bone to help and support and create a better future.
I think it's doubly important because you don't see people with advanced Parkinson's come to events like this because of the challenges. So we shouldn't ignore those silent voices. Shall we take the next question?
Yes, let's have one in the room. There's lots of hands up. Where are we pointing?
Hello there. I just wanted to ask, what support do you receive when you are diagnosed with Parkinson's by law in Holland? Thank you.
So first of all, it's ample time with the neurologist. Second, you have a follow-up consultation with me within 2 weeks. 3, you're immediately coupled to a Parkinson nurse specialist who will also plan a separate consultation because nurses talk about other elements than the doctor. 4th, on the day they receive the diagnosis, they receive a little card to a website with all the information we have gathered, reviewed, made uniform, so people have trustworthy information, and I urge them to review that information in the next 2 weeks so they can come back to me with tailored questions. And then, of course, we've got our Dutch nationwide Parkinson net, which is our network of specialized physios, OTs, dietitians, speech-language therapists across the entire country. So everybody has access to multidisciplinary care in the community within 15 minutes of your house.
Can we have that here, please?
Yeah. So, and I've spoken to Parkinson's UK about whether we can collaborate, and there are elements of Parkinson's care in the UK that are wonderful and that I would like to bring to Holland. And the Dutch Parkinson-net solution is not a panacea. It's a good solution, which is a cost-effective solution. It saves money, improves quality of life, prevents complications. I've had previous discussions with your prior CEO about how to partner around Parkinson-net. And I think, and I'm just going to say it here because it's important to me, we want to help. We just want to share knowledge. But if there would be a Parkinson-net here in the UK, it would be run by the English, for the English. We will help you to build it, and we will withdraw. It will not be like William the Conqueror from Holland, but we want to help. We want to collaborate, and it's learning from differences. We want to bring the best of the UK to Holland and the best of Holland to the UK, because ultimately people with Parkinson's worldwide should benefit. So it's a shout out to Parkinson's UK. Let's open that dialogue again and see if we can partner.
We've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes left. Time for another question.
One more. Oh dear. Barnu, okay.
Mine comes with a first telling off. Bas, don't ask people to go to their neurologist to diagnose their back pain, because the neurophysios are the ones who are going to know whether there's rigidity, postural changes, architectural issues. So that's your telling off. But the question, because you are an expert, have people done as many studies into different diets, so Far Eastern, South Asian, Middle Eastern, compared to Mediterranean? Because we're not getting enough people of ethnic differences participating. Yeah. So I wouldn't prefer a Mediterranean diet.
Sure. So 2 things. One is, this is a living example of multidisciplinary care, and why it is only appropriate that an expert physio tells off the neurologist that he's wrong, and you should never be too proud to admit your wrongdoing. So yeah, you're right, I admit. Second, no, there's very little research in diet in general. Even my statements on the Mediterranean diet are supported by a mediocre number of studies of relatively poor quality, let alone that we're looking at different types of diets. And what you're tapping into is this diversity. And diversity is not nearly receiving enough attention. What we do know is that we don't pay attention enough to diversity, to cultural differences, religious differences, economic differences across the globe, and we really need to do that. My clinic in Nijmegen is dominated by white Caucasian men, which is wrong. It's completely wrong. I'm seeing the wrong population. I'm seeing rich, highly educated people. I want to take care of that poor woman living in a flat somewhere in Rotterdam with her 6 children, who comes originally from Nigeria. She's not coming to my clinic, and we're not doing a good job. So your question about diet is well taken. No studies, but I taps into the diversity issue at large. It should be a top priority for all of us.
I'm afraid we're running out of time, but just before we leave, can we put up the responses to the question that we asked? And if we have a look, sleep, dream, dance, laugh, cycle. What stands out for you guys?
Sleep,
yeah.
Play pickleball, that's quite interesting.
Yeah. So I always tell people in my clinic, Parkinson's does not go on vacation at night. And one of the most commonly made errors by colleagues who do not understand Parkinson's well enough is that they undertreat the night. Yeah. So if you've got early Parkinson's, 3 times a day levodopa probably spills over in the night. But the moment you experience early morning awakenings, it's called sleep fragmentation. You can't continue sleeping. Difficulty rolling over in bed. The painful foot dystonia that Dave is describing, which is typically also worse at night. Peeing at night. All those symptoms are treatable and are typically a sign of lack of dopamine at night. So the night is often undertreated. And there is at least 10 other reasons why people with Parkinson's have difficulty sleeping. A REM sleep behavior disorder requires a different treatment approach. Restless legs requires a different approach. So sleep is treatable. You need to go over the 20 reasons for poor sleep and adjust your treatment accordingly. Sleep is treatable, and my favorite slogan is better nights, better days. If you sleep well, your days will be better. So don't accept poor sleep. Discuss it.
I'm just reading from this. Socialise, laugh and smile. I think we've done that over the last hour.
Trying.
Thank you very much, Bas.
I think if you can stand up, I think Bas deserves a standing ovation.
Definitely.
Thank you. Brilliant. Cheers, Bas. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Bas.
Cheers, Bas.
Really enjoyed that.
The 3.
Great.
Well done.
Thank you.
The world has split in two. To keep it close and never land. I lace the clouds on my feet. I put all stars in